when a little boy stood in court and told the judge, "Free my dad and I will make you walk." The entire courtroom froze. No one expected what happened next, and in seconds, every single person was left in silence. The courtroom was quiet. The sound of shuffling papers echoed from the judge's desk. People filled the wooden benches, whispering softly, waiting for the decision. A little boy sat in the front row. His legs barely reached the floor. His small hands clutched the edge of the bench. His eyes stayed fixed on his father, standing tall but tired behind the bars. The father's shoulders were heavy. He tried to smile at his son, but the smile trembled. The boy stood up. His tiny steps tapped against the cold marble floor. Every head turned as he walked toward the front. The air seemed to freeze. The judge looked down, surprised to see the boy approach. The boy's voice was soft but clear. "Free my dad," he said, his lips shaking, "and I will make you walk." The room fell silent. Even the sound of the ticking clock on the wall seemed to stop. The judge blinked, puzzled by the words. People in the gallery exchanged confused glances. The father lowered his head, ashamed and worried for his child. The boy lifted his chin. Tears glimmered in his eyes, but his voice stayed strong. "My dad taught me to believe in miracles," he continued. "He told me that one day, even the hardest hearts can soften." The judge's fingers tightened around his gavel. His lips pressed into a thin line. The boy stepped closer, his small shoes squeaking against the polished floor. He stopped right in front of the judge's bench. "I cannot give you money," the boy whispered. "I cannot give you power, but I can give you something you lost long ago." The room leaned forward. A woman in the back gasped softly. The boy reached into his pocket. His hand trembled as he pulled something out. It was a folded piece of paper, worn and crumpled. He opened it carefully with his small fingers. Inside was a drawing, a stick figure holding the hand of another. One had a cane. The other was smiling. The boy raised it high for everyone to see. "This is you," he said, pointing at the figure with the cane. "Is me. I will make you walk with me. Not with your legs, but with your heart." The judge's eyes flickered. For a moment, his stern face cracked. The silence in the courtroom grew heavier, pressing against everyone's chest. The father bit his lip hard, fighting the tears in his eyes. The boy's small voice filled the vast room again. "If you free my dad, I will walk with you every day. I will never let you be alone." Would you like me to continue this story further, building up the emotional climax until the judge finally reacts? The judge's hand loosened around the gavel. He leaned back slowly in his chair. His eyes shifted from the boy to the father, then back to the boy again. The boy's tiny chest rose and fell quickly as he waited. His voice trembled, but he spoke. "Once more, my dad is not perfect," he admitted, "but he is good. He fixes broken things. He fixes people too." The father covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. The courtroom held its breath. Even the guards by the door stood still, their eyes softening. The boy unfolded another piece of paper from his pocket. This one was colored with bright crayons. It showed a house, a tree, and 3 figures standing together. One tall man, one woman, and a little boy in between them. The boy's finger tapped on the tallest figure. "This is my dad," he whispered, then he tapped the small figure in the middle. "This is me." He raised his head toward the judge again. "If you take my dad away, this picture will never be real." The judge swallowed hard. His throat tightened as he stared at the drawing. For the first time, his stern eyes glistened. The boy stepped closer to the bench. "I promise you," he said softly, "if you free him, I will walk with you. I will remind you what family feels like." The room was so quiet that the sound of the boy's heartbeat could almost be heard. The judge's lips parted, but no words came out. He set the gavel down on the desk. The father finally lifted. His head. Tears ran down his face as he whispered his son's name. The judge looked at the boy again, and something deep inside him stirred. Would you like me to take the story further and show the judge's emotional reaction, or keep building suspense before revealing his decision? The judge leaned forward, his elbows resting on the desk. His fingers pressed against his temple as if trying to hold back something heavy inside him. The boy stood silently, waiting, his little hands still clutching the drawings. The father's breathing was uneven, his chest rising and falling with silent sobs. The judge finally spoke, but his voice was lower, softer than before. "Why do you care so much, little one?" he asked. The boy blinked, his eyes shimmering. "Because he is my world," the boy replied without hesitation. "When I am scared, he holds me. When I fall, he lifts me. And when I dream, he tells me I can reach the sky." The courtroom grew warmer with the weight of his words. A woman in the second row covered her mouth with her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. The boy stepped even closer, until he was right below the judge's desk. He held up the drawing again, his small fingers shaking. "I want you to see not what he did wrong, but what he still can do right." The judge inhaled slowly, his chest tight, his gaze dropped to the paper, then to the boy's face. For a long moment, he was silent. The father whispered, his voice breaking, "Son, enough, please." But the boy shook his head firmly. "Dad, Not enough. He turned back to the judge, his voice rising with courage. You can give me back my dad, or you can take him away forever. The judge gripped the edge of the desk. His knuckles turned pale, his eyes wet. Everyone in the courtroom leaned forward, waiting for the words that had not yet come. Would you like me to now bring the judge's emotional breaking point, or keep the suspense a little longer before his decision? The judge's breath grew. Heavy. His stern mask began to crumble. The boy's words clung to the walls of the courtroom like a prayer no one could ignore. His small frame stood there, yet his voice carried the weight of truth. The father lowered his head again, unable to meet the judge's eyes. The silence pressed harder, so deep that even the ticking clock now seemed unbearable. Finally, the judge pushed his chair back slightly. The sound of the wooden legs scraping against the floor made everyone flinch. He removed his glasses and placed them gently on the desk. His eyes, tired yet tender, locked on the boy. You speak with a heart stronger than many grown men, he said quietly. The boy clutched his drawing tighter, nodding without a word. The judge's lips trembled as he continued. I see more than just a father on trial today. He paused, swallowing hard. I see a little boy who believes in him, and I see a chance for something better. The boy's eyes widened, hope flickering like a spark in a storm. The father's chest heaved, his hands trembling against the cold metal of the railing. The crowd stirred, whispers rippling across the benches. The judge raised his hand for silence. I cannot promise miracles, he said, his voice firm but softened. But I can promise I will listen. Truly, listen. Before I decide, the boy's lips curved into the faintest smile, though his eyes still glistened with tears. The father mouthed his son's name again, but this time his voice carried both pain and pride. The judge sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable, but his heart no longer untouched. Would you like me to continue into the moment when the judge finally announces his decision, or keep building the tender suspense a little more? The boy's smile lingered, fragile but bright, as he looked up at the judge. The judge's hands rested on the desk, his fingers no longer trembling, but still heavy with the weight of choice. The father stood frozen, his eyes fixed on the man who held their future. No one in the room dared to move. The air was thick with expectation, as though even the walls leaned closer to hear the words. The judge drew in a long breath. His voice, when it came, was steadier, but carried a trace of emotion that could not be hidden. I have seen many cases, he began slowly. I have heard many pleas for mercy, but I have never been spoken to like this. Not by a lawyer, not by a witness, not by anyone. The boy's eyes searched his face, waiting. The judge lowered his gaze to the drawings lying on the desk. His hand touched the paper lightly, as if it might break under his fingers. A picture, he whispered. Yet it carries more truth than all these documents before me. The boy's chest rose sharply, as though he had just taken the first deep breath in hours. The father closed his eyes, his lips moving in silent prayer. The judge looked up again, and for the first time, his voice softened into something close to human warmth. This decision is not only about punishment, he said firmly. It is about hope, and whether a boy should grow with or without the man he loves most. Gasps rippled quietly through the courtroom. The boy gripped the bench edge with his small hands, his eyes locked on the judge's next words. The judge's gavel rested untouched beside him, yet everyone knew the next sentence would strike louder than any blow of wood against wood. Shall I continue and bring the judge to finally announce his ruling, or keep the moment stretched with more suspense before the reveal? The judge's lips parted, but he hesitated. The weight of the room pressed down on him, as if every soul inside waited for his heart to speak before his mouth could. The boy's eyes glistened, shining like two tiny lanterns of hope in the silence. The father's breath caught, his fingers gripping the rails so tightly his knuckles turned white. The judge leaned forward, his voice deep but trembling at the edges. This court is meant to uphold the law, he said slowly, but the law is not blind to compassion. The crowd shifted, the sound of fabric and muffled gasps filling the air. The boy took one step closer, his chin raised, his small body trembling with both fear and courage. The judge looked at him, and for the first time, his stern eyes softened. Completely. You have reminded me today, the judge continued, that justice is not only about rules, it is about people. The boy's lips quivered, his hands tightening around the crayon drawing. The father bowed his head, tears sliding freely down his cheeks. The judge's hand hovered over the gavel. The courtroom grew, so silent it felt as though the entire world held its breath. And then, with a voice that carried through every corner of the room, the judge spoke his decision. Would you like me to write the judge's ruling in a powerful, emotional way that melts hearts, or keep it gentle and open? So the suspense continues. The judge's hand rested firmly on the gavel. He looked at the boy one last time, then at the weary man standing behind the bars. His eyes closed for a brief moment, as if searching inside himself for strength. When he opened them again, his voice carried both authority and warmth. This court declares. He paused, his words hanging heavy in the air, that this man will not be taken from his son today. A wave of gasps and murmurs rushed through the courtroom. The boy's mouth opened in disbelief, his small body trembling as he clutched the drawing to his chest. The father staggered back, gripping the railing, tears blurring his vision. The judge raised his hand for silence, though his own throat was tight with emotion. He has made mistakes, the judge continued, but what I see before me is a father who still has a chance to make things right, and a child who believes in him with all his heart. The boy blinked rapidly, his tears spilling freely now. He turned and looked at his father, a smile breaking through his sobs. The father mouthed, "Thank you." Though no sound came out, the judge lowered the gavel gently, not with force, but with grace. His voice softened, no longer the voice of a man of law, but of a man who remembered his own humanity. Justice is not only punishment, it is also mercy. Today, mercy will stand. The courtroom fell into stunned silence, broken only by the sound of the boy running to his father, his tiny arms wrapped around his father's waist, holding on as if he would never let go. The father dropped to his knees, hugging his son tightly, his tears falling into the boy's hair. The judge looked away for a moment, his eyes moist, before clearing his throat, and in that silence, everyone in the room knew they had witnessed something far greater than a verdict. Would you like me to continue showing how the crowd, guards, and even the judge himself react afterward, deepening the heart-melting moment? The father held his son close, his shoulders shaking as though years of sorrow had finally broken free. The little boy whispered against his chest, "I told you, Dad, miracles are real." The father kissed the top of his son's head, unable to speak through his tears. The judge watched quietly, his stern expression gone, replaced by the faintest smile of a man who had remembered what love looked like. The gallery stood in silence, some wiping their eyes, others bowing their heads with respect. Even the guards, who had been trained to remain unmoved, shifted softly, their eyes lingering on the boy with quiet admiration. The father rose to his feet, his hand gripping his son's tightly. The boy looked up at the judge and said, "Thank you for walking with us." The judge nodded slowly, his voice calm and steady, "And may you both never stop walking together." With that, the gavel touched the desk one last time, not in judgment, but in blessing. The doors of the courtroom opened, and father and son stepped into the light, hand in hand. The boy's drawings crumpled gently in his pocket, but their meaning had filled every heart that day. A simple truth lingered in the air long after they left. Sometimes justice is written not in law, but in love. And so, the story ended not with punishment, but with hope. Hope carried by the small voice of a child who dared to believe.